Everything that happened last week, we definitely needed this type of week.
Welcome to Center Cup. I'm Kyle Muserino here as always with Will Neary and Nick Newmeyer. And we've got a recap Monday after another great weekend of golf. First, just want to touch on the Tiger Woods incident. We put out an episode on Friday that Nick led. Just like 15-minute clip. If you want to hear more info about that or some more details if you missed it, go check that out. But we're not going to harp on that one too much. We're going to talk more golf. We had a great weekend of action, bunch of great events across all the tours. Hyoju Kim went back to back on the LPGA Tour at the Ford Championship. Alex Fitzpatrick got his first DP World Tour win at the Hero Indian Open, where Akshay missed the cut, I believe, too.
hmm
Davis Lamb won the Club Car Championship on the Corn Ferry Tour. But let's start with Gary Woodland's win at the Texas Children's Houston Open. Pretty cool win for a guy who's been through a lot. Nick, what do you think about Gary's performance?
I think, like you said, this was a great weekend. I think this was something that, we needed this. I think we definitely, given everything that's going on, everything that happened last week, we definitely needed this type of week. Gary Woodland's like just such a great story. He had talked a couple weeks ago on Golf Channel about just kind of going through what has happened to him in the medical field. Obviously September 23, September 2023, he had brain surgery to remove a tumor that was causing just severe anxiety for him. Um, and in after that, he was left with PTSD. And he sort of mentioned that he kind of detailed all of that in an interview a few weeks ago, and just being able to speak freely about it. And, he had mentioned, here's a quote from the interview. I appreciate the love and support, but inside, I feel like I'm dying. I feel like I'm living a lie. I want to live my dreams and be successful out here, but I want to help people too. I realize now I've got to help myself first. And I think, his story was incredibly inspiring. I think anybody that has dealt with anxiety or any type of mental health, both publicly or privately, could relate to what he has gone through. And I think just to see him, I don't think it's a coincidence that in the weeks following him sort of getting this off his chest, he just absolutely balled out. He looked so incredibly pure. The swing looked great. Like he just looked completely in control, especially on Sunday. He just completely closed the door. And so I think there was not a dry eye in Houston as he came out. I think it was a great gesture as well from Nikolai Højgaard and Minwoo Lee. I think Nikolai had mentioned that him and Minwoo had agreed on the 18th hole that they were going to like hang back and let Gary walk up to the green by himself. I think that was just a great gesture, and I think it was just really heartwarming just to see everything that Gary Woodland's gone through. It was just really inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, but like he has not been playing, outstanding golf this season as a whole. He came into this tournament having missed back-to-back cuts at the Cognizant and the Players, and then obviously the news came out. He had that interview where he expressed the PTSD that he's been going through following that 2023 brain surgery and what that's looked like for him, how he's responded, and the importance that he felt in disclosing that, like you said, Nick, in that quote, to help himself first rather than, and just get it out in the open. And since then, like you said, T14 at the Valspar and now a very, very dominant win at the Texas Children's Houston Open. Um, I mean, I couldn't have said it better than you did. Really, really awesome to see in the broader scheme of the golf season. It's been funny because I think a lot of the tournaments we've talked through and we've reviewed, we've previewed, etc. Especially some of the smaller non-signature event tournaments, we've had like such dramatic finishes that have made these weeks so easy to talk about on Monday. Obviously what happened to the Cognizant Classic, everything that happened, in the last few weeks, or the season as a whole, just a lot of really dramatic finishes. And now this one was not a dramatic finish in the slightest, but the fact that it's Gary Woodland makes this so easy to talk about for another reason. And it's all like when I'm going through and writing up, the the tournament reviews or whatever, it was like none of this was about the golf, right? It was like everything, and that was reflected in Nikolai and Minwoo's gesture that you talked about, them hanging back and letting Gary Woodland take the stage. Like this was so opposite from all of the like in at least like in response to all the other golf tournaments that we've seen this year. This was the first one, in my mind at least, that's felt so like the storyline was so much bigger than anything else. And it's interesting because you almost, at least in the last, year and a half, really since, I guess more than that, really since the 2023 brain surgery. Obviously, this is Gary Woodland's first win since his 2019 US Open victory at Pebble Beach. So it's almost, he's become a figure in the public eye more than he has been a golfer, um, at least, in terms of success in the past few years. He's really bridged that gap to be more than a guy who's just playing golf every weekend. Um, but this was a really good example of how much it matters to him to be both, I think. He's talked so much about the fact that, his doctors would recommend that he not play golf. But he knows that this is what he needs to do. He knows that this is what he wants to do. And it's awesome to see 2 weeks after him, again, to reread the quote that Nick read, 2 weeks after he says, I want to live my dreams and be successful out here, he reaches, the pinnacle of success with a PGA Tour victory that he hasn't seen in 6 years, since 2019, 7 years. Um, so all in all, like I mean, an awesome week and like a totally opposite winning storyline to the ones that we've been talking about on the last 7, 8, 9, 10 Mondays. Um, but arguably better. Like I'd so much rather. Everybody's rooting for Gary Woodland. It's not just Nikolai Højgaard and Minwoo Lee. Everybody on the PGA Tour loves this guy. He is, just truly one of the best guys around by all accounts. So kudos to Gary Woodland, and again, like cannot express enough how awesome it is to see this. So yeah, 6 years and 286 days since his major victory.
Yeah,
So
and I
it's great to see
think
him back.
And I think the best part is, he didn't really give too much of a glimpse of what that PTSD like really looked like. I think that's a struggle that I think he's kept more so internally. But just see, like he had talked in his press conference about some of what he has been going through this week alone in terms of dealing with that PTSD. And I know he said if there was if there were fans that would get too close to him, he would get really like hyper aware and just start like his heart would start racing. I think in scoring as well, somebody got too close to him and was really it made him feel very uncomfortable. And kudos to the PGA Tour security. They really made a situation that allowed him to compete and allowed him to be the best version of himself. And they really, he mentioned a lot in his press conference yesterday about how helpful they have been throughout this entire process. But I think what he said was, this isn't obviously, anybody that's dealt with mental health will know that once you talk about it, it doesn't magically go away just because you started talking about it. It's something that always stays with you, and you don't fix it. You kind of just find ways to deal with it. You kind of find ways to sort of approach it differently. And I think what Gary Woodland said was that it was really important to him to prove that he's not going to let it beat him. And I think that was probably the most inspiring part of the weekend was that he was obviously going through it throughout the entire week, but he knew inside him that he said, like, I'm going to persevere through this. I will not let this beat me. And so I think it was just overall to see how he dealt with his mental health throughout that entire week was just a very inspiring thing to me.
Yeah, I mean, just an awesome story, feel good story. Like Will mentioned, and he has in the notes here per ESPN, nearly 7 year drought between wins. So 6 year, 286 day stretch was the fourth longest in PGA Tour history between a major victory. and that player's next PGA Tour win. So, I mean, just purely awesome for something, a guy that nobody has anything bad to say about on tour, was really cool to see. Um, and, you guys mentioned Minwoo Lee and Nikolai Højgaard, gave him the stage walking up the 18th green. Nikolai Højgaard also just shit the bed on Sunday to give Gary the win, which was also a nice
Man.
gesture of him. Will, you're
Yeah.
prove me right guy. What do you think about Nikolai?
I will say I appreciate you saying that, Kyle, because it is very true that I mean, had Minwoo wanted, or sorry, had Nikolai wanted this one, he obviously no, he once again like
It's a nice
he's
gesture by him. That was
yeah,
great.
yeah,
Well, should have
no,
won
he
over on
it's
Sunday.
it was what? It was the waste management, right? Where he had a triple bogey on the second or third hole
Yep.
and then just like fought back to be won back at the
Yep.
end. But he didn't really have the fight back in him. But no, look, I talked about it last Wednesday when we were talking about this tournament. Obviously, Minwoo, or Jesus, I'm gonna mix them up all day apparently. Nikolai Højgaard was in position to make the Masters in 47th in OWGR, but needed a good finish to really solidify that. And also, he's just like playing really well. It's been a little bit of an up and down season, but the signs have been there, and he played really well until Sunday, pretty much. I mean, he had the low round of the day by himself on both Friday and Saturday, with a 62 on Friday and a 63 on Saturday. Obviously, par 70, so that's 8 under and 7 under. Nonetheless, best rounds of the day. I believe the round on Saturday was actually the best round of the day by 2 shots. I don't think anybody else broke 65, but he just wasn't up to it. On Sunday, he started one. This was really a Gary Woodland and Nikolai Højgaard tournament by Sunday, right? I think Gary
Hmm.
entered Sunday at 18 under, Nikolai was at 17, and Minwoo was at 12, along with Michael Thorbjornsen, who we can talk about in a second. Speaking of shitting the bed on Sunday, but um, so Nikolai started just one back of Woodland, really the only other person in real contention. Pretty quickly gave one back with a bogey on the first, and then he was really out of the running when he doubled seven and Gary Woodland birdied it, and that was that pretty much. I mean that was a 3 shot difference on one hole, but stretched Gary Woodland's lead to five at that point, and it's we've talked about this a couple times with a couple of different guys, and it hasn't always worked out this way for those guys. But Woodland, especially the way Gary Woodland was playing this week, once that happened, it was kind of like, okay, that he's not gonna. This is not gonna be one he gives up. This is not gonna be one he hands back to Nikolai with a string of bogeys here. And also, it's kind of, when it's like the storybook ending, not to be a little too cliche, but it's like, okay, well, Gary Woodland, we can't have Gary Woodland lose. Like, that would be such a horror. I would be so sad making this podcast if Gary Woodland had made four bogeys on the back nine to give this up. But he
Yeah.
didn't. He continued to play really good golf. Obviously, didn't need to do anything special, which when you're a really good golfer and all you need to do is make a bunch of pars, they can do that usually. Um, but Nikolai, yeah, I mean, great signs. He's going to be in the Masters. This brought him up to 36th in OWGR. He has already withdrawn from the Valero Texas Open. Obviously, he's not going to drop 14 spots by not playing. So I'm excited to see what he can do. I'm not going to look too far ahead to the Masters because I know we've got a lot of content coming out around that separately. But I I really love his golf game. Again, he's my Cinderella for the remainder of the year. I won't chalk this up to a I was right about my Cinderella, but we're on the right path. So good for Nikolai Højgaard. It's gonna I don't know what type of results to expect from him in the future, and I don't love the I guess I don't know if I can call it a trend because he finished one back at the Waste Management. He fought back and he was solo second here, so it's not really full blow ups. But I don't love the trend of two final groups this season and two pretty quickly out of contention in the final group. So all in all, very happy. Glad I shouted him out. I feel somewhat validated, but wish it hadn't been. I wish you could have put up a little bit of a fight, but obviously, if there was one guy I would want to run away with this thing, it's Gary Woodland. So happy days.
Very happy. I think, while we're on the topic of your prove me wrong, prove me right, I'll throw mine out there. Ben Griffin finished tied for 28th. I think I entered the week saying, you know, three straight missed cuts. Just give me something. you know, and he made the cut, finished tied for 28th, gained strokes in every category except putting. Um, I'm not going to sit here and say Ben Griffin is back because it was a very meaningless T28, but I asked him to show me something by making the cut, and he did. So that's really all I can ask for. So
Do you have any opinions on the fact that he just came out with a, do you know, good pros? Brad Dahlke and Sean Walsh just made a two. They played Ben Griffin in their match that just came out like
really,
yesterday or Saturday or
no,
something.
I didn't see that.
Haven't
No.
haven't made it through the whole video, but Ben Griffin did miss a 5 foot birdie putt on the first, so
Oh, dear.
maybe the putting trend is is consistent. But you never know. Maybe the YouTube jinx gets him a win. Who knows? But he did just
Exactly.
put that out.
That's funny. I'll have to take a look at that. But yeah, nothing nothing too crazy there. Let's see, who else could we shout out? Obviously, we've already talked Minwoo Lee. It's his fourth top 12 in the last five events. Really,
Yeah,
just you could tell there's something there. He's obviously a very, I think when he first came up, like he was just kind of like the influencer type golfer that was just very popular, but it wasn't really translating on the course. I think he's firmly put that to bed now.
yeah,
I think
He's
it's only a
good.
matter of time
he's
before
really good.
he cooks a little too hard and finds himself
Yeah,
holding the trophy on Sunday.
he if you look at his data golfer strokes gained profile, it's funny, the only bad results. So he's finished top 12 in his last four of his last five events. The only one that's an exception, I believe, was he was T30 something at the Players Championship. And the difference that is pretty glaring there is the fact that he was not accurate off the tee. In each of the other, he's obviously hits the ball a mile, but in each of the other four events of those five, he was above average in accuracy. So it's kind of like if he can get that driver working the way it should. Obviously, also the penalties for being not accurate at the players were a lot heavier. We kind of talked about that as well. Previewing this event were a lot heavier than they are at the Texas Children's Houston Open, obviously, but that's one of the reasons that Minwoo was such a person to watch here and why he won here last year. And if you look at the Masters, there's not a ton of penalty off the tee for accuracy. I mean, you don't get the thick rough you get at the players, so maybe worth a thought. The other one guy I do want to mention that I kind of already mentioned when I was talking about Nikolai was Michael Thorbjornsen. Just tough, man. Entered Sunday T3, obviously not in contention. He was with Minwoo at 12 under, again, 5 shots behind Nikolai and 6 behind Gary Woodland. But he was one of the guys that we were talking about before this tournament that needed a good finish to get themselves in OWGR position to make the Masters. I don't think a T3 would have put him like in there where you're like, man, he's stamp it, he's there. Um, but it would have got him within the top 50. And he might have been in position to withdraw from the Valero Texas Open and kind of, sit there and make the Masters. But now, again, entered the final round, tied for third shot, 2 over 72. Just was not pretty, like just sloppy, too many bogeys, and now he jumps only 2 spots up to 54th instead of what could have been a much more substantial jump. Ended up finishing T14. I'm not sure if I said that exactly, but so not an exciting Sunday for him. Kind of similar to, honestly, again, like we talked about with Nikolai, what happened at the WM Phoenix Open. He led the WM Phoenix Open after an eagle on 15. After making that, what was it, like an 8 to 12 foot eagle putt on 15, he had the outright lead at the WM Phoenix Open, proceeded to bogey 16 and 17 to hand that one back to eventually Chris Goddard. But at the time, it looked like it would be Hideki Matsuyama that he handed it back to. But both of those guys, the Nikolai Højgaard, the young guys in those final pairings. Thorbjornsen wasn't in the final pairing at the WM Phoenix Open, nor was he this week actually. But in those final few, in position to take a win, or to, in this case for Michael Thorbjornsen, get himself inside the Masters field, and kind of just threw up all over his shoes. So I'm not sure that's an expression, but I'm making it one. I feel like it is, but I like it. So
You heard
unfortunate
it
for
here
him
first.
that his
We'll go
shoes
with
have
it.
throw up on him. Um, but yeah, it was a disappointing finish. I love Michael Thorbjornsen, good old, Worcester, Mass boy. Um, ball frog, designated alternate, which I don't even know what that means, but he is the designated alternate for my Boston Common Golf ball frogs. So yeah, I was it was a shame to see that, but I'm sure he's got another chance. He's in the field at the Valero, so he's got another chance to think. I tried to do a little math. He doesn't need a ton, but a top 15, 10 finish would do numbers for him, would be huge.
And Kyle, it was a good showing on Sunday for the Napster.
Yeah, he was fantastic. He solidified his spot for the Masters. I think he was like 42nd or whatever. So with this T6, he's solidly in the field. I don't think he's playing next week at the Valero.
I'd be
But
surprised.
it was just good to see him bounce back after missing the cut at the Players. He got off to such a hot start. So just quick, kind of going through his week. He round one was 1 under, but he was 3 under after an eagle at 16 before he bogeyed 17, 18. 5 under round two, and then just a rough Saturday. Double bogeyed 4 and 6, and still got back to play. I think it was +5 on the first nine, and then finished the day 1 over. So shot 4 under the back nine, and then just an awesome 8 under round yesterday, which was I think tied with Nikolai and Gary for low scores of any round of the weekend. So just good to see him. Had he like won this, maybe I'd be more inclined to pick him for the Masters or something like that. But it was just good to see him play well after missing the cut at the Players and having been sick before that or whatever. So just good to know he'll be in the Masters at least.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
I think he ended up staying at 42 in
Yeah,
OWGR, which is plenty safe.
yeah,
yeah, I think one last player that I want to highlight before we can move on, not going to be in the Masters, but Sudarshan Yelmarahu. Like,
yeah,
Don't
man.
he might win the Valero.
Oh,
Don't speak so
he
soon.
is
He's in the
I
he's
field.
good.
mean, he's someone that, obviously, we had mentioned just basically came out of nowhere for the players and finished tied for fifth. And then, we thought, maybe it was just going to be like a random T5 finish. The players always has at least one person that's just kind of random up in the leaderboard, but no, came back, tied for sixth at Houston Open. Just very, very like golf is obviously, I'm not gonna get into like data golf or OWGR or anything like that, but when it comes to just pure on-course performance, he's one of the best golfers and like one of the hottest golfers in the world right now, I'd say. I don't think that's too out there to say.
I
Like I
mean,
think
it's a
he's
short sprint, but he's T6, T5 in his last two starts on the PGA Tour. One of those is the players. Hard to argue against that.
yeah, I definitely think he's someone that I don't know if I don't as a win coming, like it's just crazy to see.
The Valero would be an awesome place for him to win. I mean, and you guys wonder why I shout out 20 people each time we do a preview episode is now because I can go back and reference the video evidence of me saying that Sudarshan Yelmarahu was somebody to watch at the Texas Children's Houston Open in 2026 before his T6 finish. Now he like easily could, I'm not gonna say easily could win the Valero, but it's not. I mean, it's a strong-ish field, but it's not the strongest field. And if why not? Like you said, Nick, who else is playing who else is in this field playing hotter than Sudarshan
Well,
Yalmarahu?
he's got better odds to win the Valero than the guy who won this past weekend, Gary Woodland.
Wow. Where so okay, wait, let me think. Let me
Yeah,
give me
what
two
do you
seconds to
guys
look at the
think?
field.
Yeah,
Uh I'm pulling up the field right now. So this week's field at the Valero, top in OWGR is Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, Russell Henley, Robert McIntyre, Sepp Straka, JJ Spawn. So there's 10 guys in the top 20 or so.
yeah.
Ludwig over
Another
too.
another Yeah, another
Ludwig, yeah.
15 in the top 50. So there's 20-ish guys of the top 50. I bet you Sudarshan Yelmarahu has 3,800 plus 3,800. That's gonna
That's
be
a
my
great
guess.
guess.
Is
4,000.
it?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Man,
He's like, there's Tommy's favorite at plus 1,500. Ludwig is plus 1,600, and then it gets to a bunch of guys at two, including Spieth.
Hmm.
all
And
right.
then you've got like
Interesting.
Siwoo, Hideki, Straka, and then Ricky, Thorbjornsen at three. And then you get to JJ Spawn, Sudarshan, Kiefer, and Berger all at four. So he's in the group with a bunch of
Yeah,
legit guys. Like he's obviously they think this is real, and he's proven himself to be a pretty damn good golfer.
yeah. I haven't gotten the chance to like look deep into, course fit stuff for the Valero, but if it fits, man, he's gonna be we're gonna be talking about him on Wednesday. I feel like I can pretty confident and talking about him in more of a capacity than me being like one last guy I want to put a name out there.
I
We'll actually talk about him. Um, the only other guy I want to give a very, very brief shout out to is Johnny Kiefer. Obviously, first season on the PGA Tour has done next to nothing impressive so far. Obviously, very young guy. He's coming off three straight missed cuts at the Cognizant Players in Valspar and finishes T3 at 15 under, just a consistent, 67, 68, 66, 64. Great weekend out of him. He is in the Masters already. So he doesn't need to worry about that. I think he's around like high 60s in terms of OWGR, but he is already qualified for the Masters. So you never know. I mean, he might be, he's not going to win, but he might be one of those guys that finds his way into the top 15. You look up on Sunday and he's kind of around. So good for him. One really big bummer, Pearson Coody, WD'd, withdrew after an even par first round, which is not a great first round, but the cut ended up being 2 under. Easily could have found his way to the cut line, withdraws with a back injury. And unfortunately, he also earlier today withdrew from the Valero Texas Open, which officially ended
Uh,
his bid to compete at the 2026 Masters. He entered this past week at 51 in OWGR. Obviously, it is the top 50. He was one spot outside of qualification. This WD and other people's finishes moved him to 52nd, but unfortunately, it is quite moot. There's a very, very, very slim chance that somehow people have bad enough finishes. The calculation for OWGR is all. I was trying to do it today to try to figure out some results. You'll see some of my math later, but it would be next to impossible for enough people to have bad enough results to kick themselves out and let Pearson Coody in, which is a shame. We've talked a lot about him, especially early in the year. He started really, really hot, looked like one of the best golfers in the world, obviously at some of the smaller events, but nonetheless, a shame to see his bid for the 2026 Masters end with a withdrawal at the Texas Children's Houston Open and subsequently the Valero Texas Open as well.
mhm. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
bummer.
it's definitely, this is, as we said, this is crunch time. So just seeing if he's not going to qualify off of performance, that's one thing. But if it's something out of his control, that's a real bummer right there.
Yeah, and I believe he would have been, I'm looking it up right now. I believe he would have been the first, grandson of a Masters champion to play in the Masters. Obviously, his grandfather, Charles Coody, won not obviously, I guess, because I just had to Google it, won the 1971 Masters, the Masters tournament in 1971. So Pearson would have
Interesting.
been, and eventually maybe will be the first grandson of a Masters champion to participate in the major championship, but not this year, sadly.
Has a son of a Masters champion ever played?
I gotta think. I when was the first Masters? Because I would think of like Bobby Jones and his son, but I doubt it. I don't know. That's too complicated to Google for me to come up with right now, but I bet you we can figure it out as we go. I'll get
Yeah,
back to
So
you on
we
that.
find that the answer to that in the Masters preview we'll come out with.
There you go. Yeah,
We'll have a
exactly.
exactly.
section,
Exactly. That's a
sons
good
and
tease, Kyle.
grandsons of possible
Sons and
winners.
grandsons.
Possible
That's awesome.
firsts at the 2026 Masters.
I
The
love it.
first cousin of the wife of the great grandson of.
There we go.
I am your father's sister's cousin's former college roommate.
Exactly. And I am playing in the Masters this year.
Okay. Anything else on the Houston Children's Open?
Just what a
No.
week.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, it was great. Pearson Coody, shout out Plano, Texas also. Okay.
I believe Kyle, it's Pearson. Somehow it's Pearson.
Oh, is it really?
It's Pearson. I got corrected. It
Oh,
is
I see. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Because I've heard
it's like
Pearson.
Yeah, I have
I,
heard
I
it
think
too.
you've heard it from me. I originally said Pearson
Oh,
and
really? I feel
then
like I've
I
heard it
was
on
corrected.
broadcast too.
You might have, but apparently it's like you see it's like Pierce and then Son.
Yeah,
I
okay, I do see
I don't know.
that. Love
I don't know.
that. Love that spelling. That's great.
Good to,
Okay.
just make sure we got all the pronunciations good ahead
Yeah.
of the Masters.
Yeah, exactly. We're just practicing. Well, he's not in it, so
No, no. All right.
sorry, that was me.
LPGA Tour Ford Championship. Hyoju Kim defended her title here back to back in a couple ways. She won this same event last year and now has won two straight weekends on the LPGA Tour. Pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, by the way, the weirdest like four rounds, 61, 69, 61, 69, and finishes at 28 under par,
Insane.
which by the way is as far as I could tell in the last 10 years, um, or at least since 2019, nobody has shot better than 28 under. And if you take out the Thornberry Creek LPGA Classic, which accounts for the only two scores better than 28 under, we can go even farther back than that. Obviously, it's not obviously. Shan Fang shot 29 under at Thornberry. Uh, and I think that was in 2020, and then the year or 2019, sorry, and then in 2018, Se Young Kim shot a 31 under at that same event. So a quasi historic tournament for Hyoju Kim, who beats Nelly Korda, who I believe was at 26 under by the end. But 61, 69, 61, 69. And this is a bit of a tangent, and I promise I won't take a long time. But there was an interesting event that happened on this Thursday. Events maybe the wrong word. When Hyoju Kim, who obviously ended with a 61, needed to birdie the last three to shoot a 59.
Hmm.
And there was complaints on social media about the fact that there was not a single mention of that. It's only happened once before on the PGA Tour, or sorry, on the LPGA Tour, I believe. And obviously Hyoju Kim had a bid to become the second, and it was not covered anywhere. It was not, obviously, the broadcast for the LPGA on Thursday was not covering it. The social media account that I'm not sure the broadcast was even live on streaming at that point. It may have been, but the social media accounts for the LPGA did not cover it. They did not mention it, and there was a lot of like public outcry, essentially saying you want to be you want to work on the LPGA Tour. This is like an easy way to do it when events like this happen that are so few and far between, that can bring a lot of eyes to the LPGA Tour, especially on a Thursday, especially when it's not the busiest day it's not the biggest event on the PGA Tour schedule. It's there's a lot of reasons that people could have turned their eyes towards the LPGA for this event, and it did not was not covered. And then in response to the public outcry, might be the wrong word, but in response to the public requests for better, basically the president, I believe it is, of the LPGA Tour. I'm not sure if it's the CEO of the LPGA Tour, but he responded and basically said, This is a very fair criticism, and we will do better." I'm misquoting his tweet, but that's essentially what he said. And great. That's like a good, just, check the box accountability, trying to do better. Hopefully, next time we see a situation like this, it's not just words and they actually do try to put their best foot forward and draw as many eyes to events like this as they can. But that is not to take away from the pretty fantastic performance that Hyoju Kim had. And it was the second straight week that she beat Nelly Korda. She did jump Nelly Korda in the race to CME Globe rankings, obviously eclipsing her to get to first. Nelly Korda is now second. And I texted you guys this on Saturday because it was true then. Unfortunately, she didn't birdie any holes that she hadn't birdied already on Sunday, but on her best ball, she shot 17 under. If you just took the best score from each hole over the course of her four rounds, or her first three rounds, if you wanted to make it a little more impressive. That's crazy. I can't even imagine doing that. Anything like, I think if you took my best ball, I can't even imagine. 17 under is ridiculous. And that's with three pars. There was two eagles in there.
Jesus.
Just she's playing outrageous golf. Again, we're in a period of the LPGA Tour schedule. We're back in the United States. So this was in Phoenix, Arizona, at the Whirlwind Golf Course, and I mean, she's as hot. She's as, you talk about Sudarshan Yelmarahu. Hyoju Kim is a lot hotter than Sudarshan Yelmarahu is right now on the golf course. So shout
I
out to
mean,
her.
she was on her way to breaking, she could have broken the 72 hole low score record until she, I think, double bogeyed eight, kind of brought Nelly back into the race,
Mhm.
which got out of hand quickly. But I mean, she's just unbelievable.
Yeah,
Yeah. And she set you mentioned it's quasi-historic. It was historic. She set, I think it was 25 under par after 54 holes is the
Hmm.
LPGA record. I think you kind of touched on, sort of getting back to your tangent as well. You kind of touched on it. We almost saw another record, not fall, but get matched. To this date, there is only 159 ever on the LPGA Tour, and that belongs to Annika Sorenstam.
Hmm.
And we saw Lydia Ko almost hit that on Thursday.
Hmm.
She fired a 60
Yep.
and not a single shot of it was on. I mean, that's not the fault of the LPGA Tour. Like, you know how many times like something happens in the morning wave before the broadcast goes on. Like that's nobody's fault that she just happened to go low on Thursday morning. But at the same time, I think if somebody, even when the broadcast is not on, like, yeah, they have, the tour is kind of ahead of it. They have like the featured groups and all that kind of stuff. That's obviously something the LPGA Tour doesn't have just yet. But when you have that level of interest, or when you're trying to build that interest, there was not even public acknowledgement on social media channels. There wasn't anything about her shooting a 60. And that I feel like that's where a lot of that outcry came from, was the fact
Yeah.
that
My
this
apologies.
was
I speaking of taking accountability, I think I misspoke and said Hyoju Kim was the one who almost shot the 59. You're right. It was Lydia Ko.
right. That's why I didn't want to, like, I was looking it up as you were talking, and
No,
so I'm like,
yeah, that
did
was
he? I'm like, did he say Lydia Ko or?
I got there was too many records almost broken this week and actively broken by too many fantastic female golfers that I switched them up in my head a little bit. But you are 100% right that it was Lydia Ko that almost shot the 59.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, great from the LPGA to sort of take accountability and say, we'll do better. And as I mentioned, it's not their fault that it happened outside the broadcast window, but hopefully we've talked extensively about this new licensing deal, the new broadcast, hopefully this is the kind of stuff that could be avoided, and this is stuff that could possibly can grow the tour some more and really shed some attention to these players because, like, obviously we have good finishes on the PGA Tour, but 25 under after 54 holes is insane. And anytime there's a 59 watch, everybody stops what they're doing on the PGA Tour and tunes to whoever's about to shoot 59. And so if the LPGA can sort of do more of that, I think it would be great for their growth as a league.
Yeah, let's chalk it up to a learning experience for them.
Exactly.
I think next time they'll be ready for it.
Exactly.
For
Hopefully,
sure.
yeah.
Okay, how about DP World Tour, the Hero Indian Open over in India, where we saw Alex Fitzpatrick take home the W. Nick, what do you think about this?
I mean, the Fitzpatrick family has got to be just living the dream right now. You
Good
had
couple weeks.
you had Matt winning the Valspar last week, Alex winning this week in India. That's, just it's a really good feel-good story. I think anybody that's watched Full Swing is aware of Alex Fitzpatrick and sort of the story he's trying to forge for himself. And he's been very candid about growing up as Matt's brother and sort of being in the shadow of the USAM champion, the US Open champion, like the Ryder Cup player, like just and so he's really tried to establish himself on, like, obviously he's made a few starts on the PGA Tour. Like he's played the Zurich with Matt. They've teamed up together, but he's really tried to sort of forge his own story on the DP World Tour and just do something outside of being Matt's brother. And I think just to see him finally culminate with a win, I think this is a really good story. Sort of just getting into his round. He just kind of had sort of an average start. He went 70, 68, 72. Entered the final round trailing Eugenio Chacarra by 4 strokes. Um, did not have a good start to the round either. Made 2 bogeys quite early, and then he just went on an absolute tear for the middle to end part of his round. He just rattled off 8 birdies. And it's funny that, for as crazy as he shot on Sunday, he finished with a double bogey. And so the four shot lead that he had, turned into a two shot, or yeah, it turned
Yeah.
into a two shot victory. There we go.
Mhm.
But it was one of the lowest rounds of the day for him as well. Obviously, Sunday was a very tough day in India. Only nine players broke par, and only three of them broke 70. But this is just a great finish for Alex Fitzpatrick. It's his sixth top 20 of the DP World Tour. He had T6 last week, the Joburg Open, T14 at the Investec South Africa Open Championship. Also, T19 at the Dubai Desert Classic and T16 at the Bapco Energies Bahrain Championship. He's up to 136th in OWGR. So things are really trending. I'm not gonna go as far as Dan Rappaport and talk about, future Ryder Cup pairings with him and Matt. Like it's, obviously Dan Rappaport is close with the Fitzpatrick family. I could see why he's a bit excited there, but all in all, just a very, very great couple of weeks for the Fitzpatrick family, and it's a great story so far, and I'm really looking forward to see where what Alex can do the rest of the way.
Yeah. I like you said, Nick, it doesn't seem like it's a fluke. I mean, he's playing good golf. We've seen him play like he played well at the Open before. I think he had a top 20 in 2023 at the Open Championship.
Right.
So like we've known he could golf, but to see him like notch his first DP World Tour win in a stretch of playing really good golf on the DP World Tour feels, legitimate. Like it feels like real good golf. And I mean, up to shoot what was a 69, but easily could have been a 67 or a 68. I mean, he had birdied the 18th twice this week already. I'm going to chalk that double bogey up to knowing you're playing with a four-shot lead. Um, see, he could have easily shot a 66 or a 67 on a day where almost nobody broke 70. So kudos to him. Yeah, and Akshay missing the cut was weird, but traveling to India for the Hero Indian Open after, you know, coming off PGA Tour schedule and everything, I imagine I'm not going to think too hard about that. Obviously looking towards the Masters where Akshay is somebody that's going to be talked about a lot coming to that tournament that tends to favor lefties. I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about a 5 over first round and subsequent missed cut at the Hero Indian Open.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was a good storyline to see him playing this week. You could tell it was something that was important to him. And I think he stayed even after he was cut. He stayed. He was, saying hi to the fans. Like you could tell he really enjoyed being there. So I wish it was a better finish for him. Definitely would have been a better storyline. But other than that, good to see him in action, I guess. And hopefully he can just rebound a little bit ahead of the Masters.
Yeah, it was cool. I know, I read a couple articles on it. It was, I think, his competitive debut in India, and he talked about how tough that course is, which also didn't help. But I think not putting too much stock into his actual play. Um, and as far as Alex Fitzpatrick goes, just awesome. Couple feel good stories, always better than the feel bad stories. So that's good to see from him.
Yeah.
A
All
good
right,
take, Kyle.
what do we think about the Corn Ferry Tour Club Car Championship? Davis Lamb.
Yeah. First Corn Ferry Tour victory for Davis Lamb. Talk about a tough Sunday on the DP World Tour. It was a tough weekend on the Corn Ferry Tour. Maybe not to the same degree. A bunch of guys broke 70, but you look at the low scores of the rounds. It was Thursday was a 61 by John Pack. Friday was a 63 by Davis Lamb, the eventual winner, and Roger Sloan. And then both Saturday and Sunday was 67 low. So it played pretty tough on the weekend. Um, Davis Lamb, solid weekend. He had a Friday 63 to really put himself in good position to win, or at least to be in that pack chasing the leaders, who I'll talk about in a second. But then just played steady golf on the weekend while some other guys kind of fell away, and he was able to take this with good golf on Sunday. But I think the guy I'm kind of curious to talk about, and I have something. I'll give you guys a little quiz in a second. Is Blades Brown, who finished third at 16 under, going 66, 67, 67, 72. And he kind of dominated the weekend headlines, at least from my point of view in terms of what you saw on social media, and just the general content about this tournament as he, was chasing his first Corn Ferry Tour win and looked like what was going to be a battle between him and John Pack, who John Pack led following all of the first three rounds, going 61, 68, 67, or 71, sorry, and Blades Brown tied him at the end of round three. And obviously, we know Blades Brown. He came off third at the Puerto Rico Open, and like we were talking about chasing 59s, the amount of attention he got chasing that 59 at the American Express was incredible. Obviously, ended up settling for a 60, missing like a 4-footer on the last. Um, but the question I have for you guys, like I said, first he has yet to close out any professional victories, but so Blades Brown has made 19 Corn Ferry Tour starts since the start of 2025. How many top 20 finishes do you think he has? Don't look, but how many top 20 finishes do you think he has?
Ooh.
He's
He's
obviously
made how
very
many?
talented.
How many did
19 starts, 19
19?
starts on the Corn Ferry Tour. He's made several starts on the PGA Tour. Like I said, no professional victories, but how many top 20s do you think he has?
7?
I was gonna say seven too, yeah.
It's only five, which like kind
5.
of
Wow.
was surprising to me, just
Very
by the amount
surprising.
of attention he gets. I mean, top 20 is a good number, but I probably would have said more than that. I probably would have even said nine or 10.
He's gonna
Um,
be, he's got the only 18 years old thing working for him. Like, Ryan Williams at Alabama. He's only seventh receiver, is only 17 years. He's gonna be
Right.
like Blades Brown three
yeah.
years from now. We're gonna be like, he's still only 19 years old.
And I
It's kind
think
of feels
like
like one of those.
I I say this with all respect in the world. I Please do not interpret this as a shot at Blades Brown, but when looking at our previews every week and we're talking about Corn Ferry events, we're always very quick to say, "Oh, Blades Brown's in the field, Blades Brown's in the field." How much of that is because of what like would we be talking about him at all if he didn't almost win the Amex?
Oh,
No, I
I thought
mean,
you were gonna say if his name was Charles Brown
I
at
kind
some
of thought we might
point.
be, I thought we might be going down that road too, and I was ready to say the same thing. No, but,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, right, almost win the Amex, and in 2025, he made some starts on the PGA Tour. Obviously, didn't do well, but was got a lot of attention for being young. He made starts on the PGA Tour in uh did he? I don't think he did in 2024 actually, but he's been around, um, and he's just he's not honestly. I don't consider it to be anything intentional. But he's like a name in the media, and he's a name people know. He's very recognizable. So whenever, like I said, he dominated the content this weekend. I didn't see anything about maybe I'm not as in depth on Corn Ferry Tour media as I should, but I saw a lot less content about John Pack than I did about Blades Brown, and they entered Sunday both leading, right? Like it's like you said, we talk a lot about him, and a lot of that is because of the T3 at the Puerto Rico Open, the one shot off the lead going into the final round at the American Express. And yeah, I agree with you, Nick. It's that was kind of my point asking the questions. Like to me, I mean, five top 20s and top 20s on the Corn Ferry Tour, like you expect a guy who's got some status like that to, I would have expected him to have better performances than that. Maybe my expectations are the problem, but yeah, that was a little surprising to me, just looking at his results page and not seeing a whole lot of green, seeing mostly just kind of average finishes on the Corn Ferry Tour. And obviously all you need is really to stay steady, and you get the top 20 in the Corn Ferry Tour standings, and you get your PGA Tour card. There's still plenty of opportunity and a lot to be impressed about with several top 20s on the Corn Ferry Tour. It's a very, very hard tour. But I think maybe just the way we talk about Blades Brown, like you were saying, Nick, to me, I would have expected that he had built up a little bit more of a resume.
Yeah. And I don't want to say like, oh, let's pump the brakes on Blades Brown. Like
Right.
that's not at all what I'm trying to say, but I do think we need to sort of temper expectations. Like he came out firing on a birdie fest at the MX. Like that's not I don't want to say that's not impressive because it absolutely is, but we're over a month removed from that. And so I
Yeah.
think um, the hype. I'm not gonna say the hype should settle down, but I definitely do think we need to be a bit realistic of what we're expecting out of Blades Brown in 2026. But one
Um,
Yeah.
player or what were you gonna say, Cal?
I was just gonna say, throw this in here. I also wonder if just because like the Amex is the first big PGA Tour event of the year, and he did so well in it, it's kind of like it sets the stage for the rest of the season. So the rest of the season from here on out, it's like Blaze Brown's gonna, do good, and then it just
Yeah,
hasn't
I do
quite
agree with that.
happened.
Yeah.
So just the
definitely. And
nature of
and
that.
I feel like the Amex also holds a little bit of a weird position to have it with what happened with Nick Dunlap being an amateur and winning there and then
Yeah.
turning professional. Like there's precedent, right? So it's a little bit of that. Like when we saw him do it at the Amex, it was like, well, it's happened before, so maybe it could like if he was, in position at other tournaments, I feel like there might have been more expectation of him to fall backwards rather than at the Amex where we've seen a guy close out like Nick Dunlap who actually won the tournament, and you're kind of like, oh, somebody else did it. Maybe Blades can do it. But go ahead,
Yeah,
Nick. Who
totally.
else did you want to shout out?
I wanted to shout out Miles Russell. I think
Yeah,
he's one of the also young guns. He's still only 17 years old.
ridiculous.
Future teammate of Charlie Woods
Florida
at
State.
FSU.
Mm.
Yeah, but tied for 15th at 17 years old. It's his highest professional finish. He made his first PGA Tour cut at the Puerto Rico Open as well. Um, and I think, it's a conversation to have about these young players. I'm almost thinking like, we've talked about sort of the journey that Akshay Bhatia has taken and just sort of foregoing college and just going pro. And, Miles Russell, he's someone that, I'm not sure he's going to stay all 4 years at Florida State just because he's so good right now. And I could see him going for the development. Obviously, like maybe he'll get some sponsors exemptions as well and like just get some higher standing. But just really, really good player. And I you know I swear everything I'm saying today is sounding like it's going to be a shot. I don't mean for it to be a shot, but when when players like Charlie Woods get all this hype for being young guns, you expect finishes like Miles Russell. Like, I feel like Miles Russell is what everybody expects Charlie to be doing right now. But obviously they're just two different players and almost different skill sets. I think Charlie has the potential to be, I don't mean to turn this into Charlie rant, but I think Charlie has the potential but just needs a bit more development, whereas I think Miles Russell is a bit more ready to go. And I think the interesting thing about Miles Russell was that he was originally supposed to caddy for another 17-year-old asterisk Tally at the Augusta National Women's Amateur. She's one of the top amateur women's golfers in the game right now. She played at Augusta last year, committed to the absolute powerhouse of Stanford women's golf. Um, but now she needs to find a new caddy because he tied for 15th, which exempts him into the next Corn Ferry event as well. So, just a very fun story. And this is the fun little things on the Corn Ferry Tour that you can watch and just see these fun stories.
Yeah, and to further emphasize, like, I mean, obviously he wasn't in direct contention, but he shot the low round of the day on Sunday, tied for it at least with a couple other guys, including Ian Holt, who finishes T7 and is continuing to chase that third victory on the Corn Ferry Tour to get automatic promotion. It's a conversation for another day about Miles Russell and a lot of these guys that you brought up, Nick. We don't have enough time to delve into it, but I'd be interested to kind of talk a little bit more about maybe we should do this another time, maybe surrounding an amateur championship or something. But just I'm a little surprised that he's going to FSU, like not FSU the school, like that he's going to college.
Yeah.
Um, like you said, he is like a very polished golfer. I mean, like there doesn't seem to be a lot of intimidation factor that he's dealing with. He's finishing T15 on the Corn Ferry Tour. Um, I mean, again, like you said, I think it's probably the right decision. I would tend to advocate for, like you said, I doubt that he goes for all 4 years, but I would tend to advocate for going to college and getting more experience, especially considering the facilities and the training that you have access to at college. I'm a little surprised that he's not more directly following in the Blades Brown, Akshay Bhatia footprints. But I am really excited to see what he does at FSU. And I tend to actually think it's probably quite smart for him to go. So
Did you
Yeah.
really exciting.
consider did you consider he might want to watch some mediocre college football?
I didn't. I didn't consider that. That might be the case. That might be the case. Maybe he just wants to like get the annual visit from Jameis Winston,
Yeah,
just learn how to eat some W's.
a
Yeah,
lot of
for sure.
extenuating circumstances we don't know
Yeah.
about.
I
Yeah.
think the one thing that it reminds me of is the whole um, Matt Fitzpatrick recruitment at Northwestern. I feel so. Just a bit of a backstory there. He was recruited about a year and a half before he won all of his amateur tournaments. Um, let me pull up. I have the actual numbers as well. But let's
Yeah. I'm
see. So he first caught the eye of Northwestern in summer 2012. Um, and he was just competing in like the European Championships. He later he signed with Northwestern November 2012, and at the time was ranked 11th in Wagger. It was 3 months after he won the British Boys Amateur, and then in the summer before his freshman year, he was the low amateur at the Open Championship, runner-up at the English Amateur, and then won the U.S. Amateur at Brookline. And so this was, and which brought him to the number one amateur ranking. Now, I don't know off the top of my head where Miles Russell is in Wagger right now, but okay, so
I
he's
can
number
tell
eight.
you,
He's
yeah, he's
eight
eight.
right now. And so it kind of reminds me of the Matt Fitzpatrick situation where, maybe, um, I mean, I feel like Miles Russell has just been good for a very long time,
We've
but
known a lot about Miles Russell. He was 15 when he made his right. He holds the Corn Ferry Tour record for the youngest player to make the cut when he finished T20 in 2024 at 15 years old. That was on the Corn Ferry Tour.
yeah, okay, so maybe it was a bit different in terms of like the overall recruiting, but I think, even with Fitzpatrick, I talked to his coaches when I wrote that story, and they said like, by the time he was like starting to golf for them in his freshman year, like the writing was on the wall that he was not going to be there for 4 years. And I think this is a very similar situation with Miles Russell.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's surprising to me, but good for him. I hope he gets like a ton of really good training and comes out even stronger.
Exactly. We'll be paying attention to him, and hopefully we'll be talking about him on the PGA Tour very soon.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, how about a major update here, Will, after this week's
Yeah.
events? What do we got there?
I'll keep it brief, but we talked a good amount about it, about the results on the PGA Tour. So I won't delve too deep into them, but obviously Gary Woodland wins, and he was already exempt into the US Open because he won in
Yep.
2019, but this does give him exemption into the Masters and the PGA Championship. So he's now in three of four. It vaulted him up to 51st in OWGR, I believe. With this win, he was up at like 139th in OWGR, which is kind of surprising coming into this week. But now he's 51st, which obviously doesn't matter for the Masters. The only one it would matter for is the Open Championship, which is the one he is not qualified for, which takes the top 50 as of May 25th. So we got 2 months to kind of sit on that one and hope that Gary Woodland can find his way up a couple more spots and get himself in there. On the DP World Tour at the Hero Indian Open, Alex Fitzpatrick won. He is still just 136th in OWGR and well outside any cut lines, but there are certain DP World Tour exemptions, particularly for the Open Championship. I believe they take the top five in the Race to Dubai rankings, and Alex Fitzpatrick now is sixth. So that he's outside of it, but like Nick was saying, he's playing really good golf. So you never know what could happen over the next couple months. Again, no live golf tour this week, so the exemptions which go to the top ranked, non otherwise exempt live golf individual standings member would go to Elvis Smiley. That's for the US Open and the Open Championship, which again, we've got a little bit of time. OWGR, I talked a lot about this already. as we mentioned, Jake Knapp is still at 42nd. He's safe. Nikolai Højgaard is now at 36. He's safe and will be in the Masters tournament. The guys outside the bubble, we talked about Pearson Coody dropping one spot to 52nd and withdrawing, so he will not be there. We talked about Michael Thor Bjornsson moving up to 54th. He's got an opportunity at the Valero to get himself in the field. The other two guys worth mentioning at 64th and 65th in OWGR and in the field at the Valero Texas Open and not in the field at the Masters currently. Rio Satsune and Ricky Fowler are 64th and 65th. And they both would kind of need. I tried to do some back of the napkin Excel math like 2 hours before this call, before we recorded, and I think I got it right. I think I understand how all the OWGR math works. It's insane, but I think I figured it out. I think they need a round. It all is dependent, obviously, on other people's finishes and stuff in terms of what average points you need to get into the top 50. But it looks like around a top 3 or 4 finish for both Rio Satsune and Ricky Fowler would put them in fairly good position. Um, Not going to be easy. It's a pretty decent field, like we talked about. There's like, 10 of the top 20 or so are here, so it will be a tough challenge. But yeah, those are kind of the two guys. Those two guys and Michael Thorbjornsen are really the three that are in position to get themselves in if they do something special. Obviously, Michael Thorbjornsen could probably do with more of like a top 12 finish to find his way in, maybe top 10 or 11. But Rio Satsune and Ricky Fowler need a little bit more magic.
Always good update. So we've still got a little bit to look forward to for the Valero Texas Open this week as it pertains to the Masters. So a good field too. So we'll preview that for Wednesday's episode, and then as we barrel towards Masters Week, we are going to be churning out a bunch of content. We'll have a better idea of that for you on Wednesday as well in terms of our schedule, but we're planning on whether it's out on our podcast feed or on our social channels. Hopefully, we'll have something for you every single day next week as we get ready for the best week and weekend of the year at Augusta. As always, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at centercup.pod. Our Twitter is at centercuppod. You can look for our picks. Nick and Will, of course, still trying to get one right. So we
Man, I
will.
was feeling cocky after Sam Burns was like
I
held the lead
know.
after round one for 2 seconds. I was
Yeah.
texting you guys. I was like, call it. It's over. He's obviously going to end in what, like
Stop the count.
T21.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, one of these weeks, you guys might get lucky. We'll see. And you can always email us at centercup.pod@yahoo.com.
You can.
Any final words, boys? This was a fun episode.
No, I think we're all
No?
good. Yeah, very fun.
Yeah.
We got a great couple weeks of golf ahead of us, and
Yeah.
all respect towards the Valero Texas Open, but my God,
Yeah.
it's almost Masters
Maybe
week.
peeking ahead. We're maybe peeking
Yeah.
ahead a little
We're going to
bit.
give it its due credit, but forgive us if we're a little excited for what's happening next
Yeah.
week.
I mean, this has just been such a great season already so far,
Hmm.
and now it's like the Masters, like it's just feels like it's getting going
I
again,
mean,
which is great. It's just already been such a fun year.
yeah.
So this
To
is,
give the very, very briefest overview of my Masters opinions is with the way Scotty's playing, I have no idea who's going to win this thing, which is
yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
awesome.
makes it
It could
awesome.
be anybody. There's 25 names that come to mind that could find their way to the top of this leaderboard. So we're in for a treat for sure. It
Yeah,
might also be
it's
Scotty Scheffler, but we're in for a treat.
well, we know it definitely won't be Jordan Spieth unless Nick talks us into
Oh,
it.
Whoa.
And
Are
we
you
will.
forgetting that Jordan Spieth is going to be coming off a win at the Valero Texas
Oh,
Open by this time
yeah.
next
exactly.
week?
Oh, I
It's
can't
the
wait to hear
Easter
about
Bunny.
that. Can't wait to hear about that on Wednesday. And we will get into all of that then. Thanks for listening as always, everybody.